Hello, everybody. This is Ramona again. I know that you've been listening to some of my videos on how to be positive, how to be resilient, and more importantly, how to really tune in with your intuition in order to get through not just this period that we're going through, but obviously to, get ready, plan. And it's my little slogan, ready, steady, go. Today's a new day. What am I going to do with today? A day I've never lived before and I'm never going to live again. Now, this afternoon, I want to talk to you about vision and I want to talk to you about being a visionary. It's quite interesting. I'm actually want to first of all say I'm saying hello to you from Nice, my little enclave or lockdown in the south of France. And this was part of my vision. It was one of those things that most of my friends, clients, colleagues, etc., kept hearing me talk about forever and ever, amen. And, it's so nice to be able to share my thinking with you in this place that I had a vision to be in uh, oof, 15 years ago. So let's just talk about becoming a visionary. When people talk about vision, people talk about being a visionary. A lot of people say to me, or my clients say to me, Ramona, are we born visionaries? And I always want to say, no, you're not born a visionary. You become a visionary. Your thinking, the way you think, the way you start thinking about your life and what you want out of your life helps you and makes you a visionary. I'm a great believer in the fact that, we don't choose the fact that we were born, neither do we choose when we're going to leave this planet. But the one thing that we can do is we can actually control what we do in between those two periods of our lives. And this is where being a visionary or becoming a visionary is so very important. Just to share with you, my father, who I adored and unfortunately passed away many years ago, was a visionary. He was the kind of person who always seemed to know what was going on in the future. He read a lot. He was intellectually very smart. Of course, he was my dad, so I thought he was the best thing since sliced bread. But you know what was very interesting? I remember many years ago, we were born in Kenya, very beautiful country, absolute paradise. And my papa always used to say, there's one thing that's going to happen in the future, and that is India is going to become one of the most incredible economies in the world. And I always remember saying to my father, oh, come on, Daddy, I mean, compared to Kenya and Britain and all these amazing places, how can India, with its poverty and all of this stuff, become one of the major economies in the world? And my father said to me, it will, mark my words, darling, it's going to be probably second to China. And this was my father talking to me, in the 60s, let alone the 60s and 70s. And one thing he did do was he did put his money where his mouth was. And he always said, I'm going to retire in India. He never quite made it because he wanted to go and retire in Goa. But he did buy a property. And he bought that property, would you believe it, for £800. Do you know today that property is worth over £300,000? Now, you know what's really interesting was he was a visionary. My father used to be able to say things and I'd always go, gosh, Dad, that's complete nonsense. And it's really strange that as the time has gone on and my father's passed, most of the things that he talked about and how he visualized things and how he saw the future have actually come to fruition. So, I say to you, you're not born a visionary. You actually have to read, you've got to think. But more importantly, if you start planning your life and you start planning where you want to be, it's amazing how just creating that little journey, you can actually start seeing where you want to go. And that's what we mean by being a visionary. The key issue at the end of the day is, I've been talking in my videos about plan. And that's what it's all about. Another story, when my husband died, as I said to you guys, my husband passed away now quite a long time ago. I had to restructure my whole life. I had to start up a new strategy. And the interesting thing for me was I had to actually plan. I had to plan for the future. And I was thinking quite seriously about the fact that my whole life had changed. Where did I want to go? What was I going to do? And so guess what? what I talk to you guys today is exactly what I did for myself. And I set up a plan. And because I set up my plan, which was A, in 10 years from when my husband died, perhaps it was going to be a bit longer, and believe you me, it has. I wanted to be happy. Of course, I wanted to be happy, but I had to ask myself, what did happiness mean to me? Happiness to me was having financial security. And therefore, I had to make a plan to figure out that in 10 to 15 years' time, I was going to be financially secure. So, what I did was I sat back and I looked at A, where I wanted to be, which is happy to be happy and financially secure. But what I also wanted to figure out was that how was I going to get there? It wasn't just a question of sitting down and saying, this is my roadmap. In 10 years, of 10 years, I want to be financially secure, happy, and guess what? Live in the south of France. What I really had to do was I had to sit down and look at, okay, so that's where I really want to be. But where am I now? And where I was at that stage then was basically looking at having three businesses, being very vulnerable, and trying to figure out, am I going to be able to sustain not just the thoughts of being a visionary and my vision and this journey I wanted, but also how was I going to sustain now, i.e., that first year, the second year, and the third year. So, what I really did was I sat back and I said, where am I now? Where do I want to be in 1 year? Where do I want to be in 2 years? And where do I want to be in 3 years? And interestingly enough, I set myself goals. I worked out where I was going to be with my businesses, what I was going to do with them, and more importantly, I figured out that apart from my businesses, I had assets. So I sat back and I thought, I've got this house. I really don't want to live in this house anymore because it was a house that I'd had so many incredible moments with my husband and my friends. And I thought, no, it's an asset that I have to do something about. So I sold it. And you know what? I bought three different tiny little properties, but they were all in Kensington that I knew really well in the middle of central London. And my whole vision was, how was I going to be financially secure? I was going to make sure that one of my properties was going to be sold as and when there ever was a recession. So I had a cushion, and believe you me, that happened. There was a recession in the 90s, and I sold my property, and I had a little bit of money to live in and finance my businesses, etc. My second property was always going to be the one that I was going to actually sell as and when it achieved enough value to be able to pay the mortgage on the third property. And this is what actually eventually, believe you me, it took a long time, but eventually that happened, and I sold my property and ended up with the third property, which is the one that I now have in London, which I'm actually renting, and it's helping me and has helped me to be able to buy my property in Nice. So probably we're talking 15 years. I had a plan. I was very structured about what I wanted to do. And because I knew what I wanted to do, it didn't matter what happened. It didn't almost matter what work I did. It didn't matter what happened. Lehman happened in between all of that. I still knew at the end of the day that guess what? I had to make sure I paid the mortgages on those three properties in order to achieve my vision. So there we go. We're talking about what was I doing in year 1, 2, and 3. I was acquiring property and making sure I had mortgages and then I spent my time sustaining those mortgages, which actually then gave me the financial security to be able to buy my place in France, have my place in London, and be in a position to help you guys. So that's my story on being a visionary and having a vision. And when I say having a vision and you create this roadmap, this is what happens. When you create a plan, you can see ahead. The key issue is when you see ahead, you can also start looking at all the little things that go wrong. You can preempt the situation. And what I do in metaphor is I say to my clients, and as I said to myself, pretend that you're in London and you want to go to Cape Town. And on the strength of that, work out how you can get there without flying in an airplane. You can take a boat, you can take a bicycle, a motorbike, a car, whatever. You can walk. The key issue is you cannot fly. In other words, it's going to take you a while. And in terms of when we talk about vision and strategy and being a visionary, it takes time to plan your journey. It takes time for you to get to your end goal, which was mine being in Nice. So what you've got to do is sit down and look at, you know, how am I going to get there? And I'm going to use lots of different things to get there, lots of different vehicles to get there. But the key issue as well is, what am I going to face? What are the challenges that I'm going to face? And you start preempting the challenges. So in metaphor, if you were actually using a car, you might get a flat, you might run out of gas. If you have a bike, it might get stolen. You know, if you're on a motorbike or anywhere, you might come across a bridge that's broken down and you have to change route. So you start thinking about all these incredible things that could happen, and you start making plans of that. If these things happen, what will I do? It's the same thing in when you plan your personal and your business plan. You sit down and you say to yourself, you know, this is where I want to be in 10 years. This is how I'm going to do it, but what are the challenges that I'm going to face along the way? And my real tip on vision and being a visionary is very simple. You know, think about yourself. Where do you want to be in 10 years? And that is, you know, your end game. Happiness is always the thing that we're looking for. So figure out for yourself what happiness really means to you. For me, it was financial security. Then think about how you're going to achieve that financial security. That financial security for most of us is through our careers or through our businesses. Now imagine that your business and your career is your fridge, you know, and your fridge has to be all the time full because it needs to sustain you through that period and through that journey. And every pint of milk you take out of your fridge, you have to replace it. But the most important thing also is, as we all know, how do I replace that pint of milk? I've got to do two things. One is I've got to be strong enough, and I've got to be resilient enough, and I've got to be positive enough, and I've got to have and follow my intuition. But I also have to have the finances to fill my fridge. So you start looking at your finances and you look at where you are now, i.e., for me, it was where was I now? What did I have to do to achieve all of this, achieve what I wanted to achieve in terms of 10 years? I needed to look at my assets. I needed to look at my property. You would have to probably look at your businesses. You would have to look at your career and sit down and work out, where am I now? What am I earning now? What would I like to earn in a year, in 2 or 3 years? And then, of course, sit back and say to yourself, what would I need to be, or where would I need to be financially in order to achieve financial security and happiness like I have done? And, you know, if you follow those three parallel routes, it's really interesting that you actually will become a visionary and you will achieve your vision. All I can say really right now is I wish you all the very best. I will be talking to you about branding on the next video. What's really interesting at the end of the day is, in order to do all this good stuff I'm talking to you about, you really need to know yourself. You really need to know yourself, and you need to know how to communicate, not just with you, but the world around you. And that's what we'll be talking next time. So what I want to say to all of you is, stay safe, take care. I know lockdown is easing, but keep your social distance. And together, as all of us in the world will, if we do the right thing, we'll all be good. And we're going to get through this thing. And I want you to now start planning your future. It's exciting. And take care now. Stay safe. Sending you lots and lots of sunshine from Nice. Go out there and start planning your future now. Bye bye.